With the school year winding down, seniors are preparing to bid high school farewell and make the big jump to college. But the rising seniors of this year, the juniors, have a lot of work to do to prepare themselves for their own senior year. One of the biggest things on their to-do list is, of course, senior pictures, which should be getting taken sooner rather than later. Here to tell us some tips for rising seniors on preparing themselves for their senior photos, we have the co-owners of Frameable Faces in West Bloomfield, Doug and Ally Cohen, joining us right now on the Splash Live. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Hey there. How are you?
I'm great. Really happy to have you with us, and really excited to be getting into this conversation. It's an important one to be having around this type of year. Doug, we're going to start with you. What are some of the most important things rising seniors should consider when choosing a photographer for their senior portraits?
Well, there's several things. I think they should consider the process that the photographer brings to the table. So I would say that and the personality of the photographer are two really important things. So when I say the process, you want a photographer that's going to hold your hand through the whole process, meet with you ahead of time, get to know you, and genuinely seem interested in creating something that is about you for your senior pictures that will be really all about capturing your personality, and that they have some ideas about how they go about their craft. Like, you can tell the difference between somebody who's really engaged and really committing to creating something special for you, as opposed to somebody who might not quite have all the experience, doesn't really know the right questions to ask, or doesn't really seem to have a game plan. So you definitely want to be, as you sort through the photographers that you either talk to or meet with, the ones that really have a plan and are really committed to creating something special. And then also just in terms of how you connect with them. You know, if you feel a connection to your photographer, that's going to come through in the photos. You know, that there's a lot to be said for how comfortable you are and how you feel about the person who's taking your photos. If there's no connection there, it'll look like there's no connection there. So that's one thing I would start with, just in terms of figuring out who your photographer is going to be.
That's absolutely right. Connection is very important. And I do have to say, connection was not an issue on my end because my mom actually worked at a photography studio for many years. So she was very on top of things and made sure that I got my senior photos done in a timely manner. I also got them done for free. But more importantly, Ally, I'm going to go to you next. How far in advance should students book their senior photo session, especially if they maybe want seasonal backgrounds, like maybe fall foliage or spring blooms?
So we are already booking for the class of 2026 right now. We've actually been booking. I think the first senior we booked for the class of 2026, I believe, was in February of this year.
Oh, wow.
And it was for that reason. She wanted a specific season. So she wanted the fall colors, and she wanted to make sure that she got there in the peak of fall colors. So she booked early. She had her choice of time, and that enabled her to, if something happens, because we do live in Michigan, and in the fall it could be 80, 90 degrees. It could be really cold. It could be rainy. So she's got that flexibility now because her session is already booked. So we've got that flexibility to move around if we need to accommodate her and what she envisioned for her senior photos.
Man, people already making the jump and getting those appointments booked. Very important to do so, as you both said. And for when students want these photos taken, I'm sure they want to show a little bit of their personality in these photos. They want to make them stand out. So, question for you, Doug. How can students incorporate their personality or maybe their hobbies or interests into their session to make the photos feel a little more authentic?
Well, we always say that there's different categories of personality for the seniors when we try to present it to them and give them some options and talk it through. Like, are you, somebody who gravitates towards nature? And do you want to be out on a trail with trees and water behind you and something really pretty? Or do you want something more edgy, in the city, in alleyways where there's where it's not real clean looking and there's graffiti on the walls, but that can be a really cool look too. And that can be something that really can kind of define how a senior feels about who they are and what kind of personality they have. And then in terms of their interests, they can bring those into the picture as well. So if they are a musician and they're in their orchestra or their band, they can incorporate their instrument. If they're an athlete, we can take one of a football or a basketball or a volleyball and have a flame coming off of it and do some really gritty stuff that really brings out their competitive nature in the sport that defines them, or whatever it might be. So we talk all of that through ahead of time to find out what they're into, and if what they're into is important enough for them to bring it into those photos. And then we can go to a location, whether it's a stadium that they play in outdoors, for example, or we can do it here in our studio because we have a brick and mortar here in the Orchard Mall. So we have that advantage of having an indoor studio, and we can create some things on different backdrops indoors as well. So we really plan that out ahead of time in a very consultative way so that we accomplish what they're looking to get.
That's right. And you said it yourself, the indoor studio definitely has a lot of benefits, as you don't have to worry about weather interfering with photos and possibly causing some issues. So you're absolutely right. Lots of things to consider. Ally, I'm going to go to you next. Can you walk us through what a typical senior photo session with you looks like from preparation to final delivery?
Absolutely. So from the very beginning, before we even start the session, we will have the senior or rising senior and or one or both parents or guardians come into the studio where we'll meet. We'll kind of plan out that photo session, ask all the questions. What do you see? If you could design your perfect session, what would you want to do? So we can give suggestions, but these aren't our senior photos. These are the seniors' senior photos. So we want to know what is important to that senior. So we get all that information. We have then a design, perks of working at home, a design consultation where we plan out outfits. I can go shopping personally with the senior and the parent. I can do it virtually. Send me outfits, send me anything. We'll make outfits that way. Then the day of the session, hair and makeup, if needed, is done. And we've got a variety of people on staff, well, at our disposal, that will help to do that. Then the day of the photo session comes, everybody's very excited. We have a dressing room set up for the senior in the studio. And then we hit it. So usually it's about, maybe 1/3 of studio work, and then we are off to the races on location. There are times where we do all studio sessions or all location sessions. All sessions with us are fun, and we make sure of that, because by the time that session comes, we know who our senior model is, who our models are, and we are able to connect with these people. So it's always a good time, and that's how we yield the best results. So usually after the session's over, we end it with hugs, and it's not uncommon to grab dinner or dessert or a snack or something with us at the end of our sessions. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. We are all encompassing, and we really put our arms around our people and make sure that they have a really good time that yield the very best results.
Man, everything sounds like a well-oiled machine. I can imagine that you guys are going to be very, very busy in the coming months. For those just joining us right now on the Splash Live, we have the co-owners of Frameable Faces in West Bloomfield, Doug and Ally Cohen, as well as their cat, joining us right now on the Splash Live, talking about preparations for senior photo seasons for these upcoming seniors, the rising seniors. And I'd imagine that when it comes to taking photos, maybe not all the time things go perfectly. What are some common mistakes or regrets you hear from students after their senior photo sessions, and how can they avoid these mistakes? Doug.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Well, the obvious one would be that, sometimes people will come to us for a session to correct one that they might have already had because they went with somebody that they shouldn't have, or they weren't happy with the results, and they didn't. Listen, without getting cheesy about this point, okay, you get what you pay for, and sometimes people will go to somebody who's more or less an amateur, and everybody has to start somewhere. But if they think they're getting a deal because someone's going to meet them on location somewhere, take a bunch of pictures and hand them a disc, and they're done, and that's it, and it's cheap, it's probably going to look and feel cheap, and you're probably not going to get the best results. It's just the way it is. And sometimes we have to correct sessions that were done with the wrong photographer. So, and listen, like I said, everyone has to start somewhere. I'm not disparaging people who are just getting going in their photography business, but the ease of entry to this business is a factor that wasn't quite there maybe 20 years ago, and a lot of people think they're a photographer, but they're not really. So sometimes we have to correct those, and people are like, "Yep, we should have come to you in the first place," and then we end up doing another session for them. That's unfortunately a relatively common mistake. But beyond that, I don't know. I guess maybe they didn't plan enough with their wardrobe, or maybe for the girls they made a decision not to get their makeup done, for example, and maybe they because they were afraid that it would look too clownish, and they're not used to wearing makeup. And we always encourage them to do that, because if you go to the right makeup artist, they can make it look so that you still look natural. So sometimes people don't make that choice, and then they regret that. But we like to think that we cover all of those things because of the way we approach everything, and that also goes for on the back end when it comes to products, because we have an ordering meeting with our clients where they come back in and they view the images with us on a big screen. We can virtually show them what their images will look like on their wall, and we really walk them through that part of it too, so that they get quality art to put on their walls that they can appreciate. You can't really get that from somebody who just hands you a thumb drive.
You're absolutely right. Lots of things to look out for, and that's why taking these photos, it's an intricate process, and it's important that you make sure that everything goes the way you want it to, and you guys absolutely help in accomplishing a lot of these things for these rising seniors. I got one more question for both of you before we let you go. What should seniors look for when reviewing and selecting their final images for yearbooks, prints, or graduation announcements once everything is said and done with taking the photos? Ally, we'll start with you.
Personality, 100% personality. So as a parent, I've had 2 kids go through their senior photos that I did for free, mind you, just like you. And my favorite shots are the ones where you can see their faces. Bodies in full length are wonderful from the parent perspective. That's great. But I want to see my kid's face. I want to see my student's face, because that's what gets me as the mom. The kids, from what I've told, they want stuff that shows their style, shows who they are. If it's the boho chic, if it's the gritty athlete, if it's the pretty princess in the field of flowers, that's what they want to see, and that's what they want to show. So like Doug said, when we have our first meeting, we drill down and we get to know what our seniors want, and then that's what we give them, and then we can help guide them through the process of selection. When it comes to yearbooks, though, those are pretty rigid parameters, and the schools all set those, and those are pretty standard. It's usually a gray background, sometimes a blue, something. I tell everybody, the guys suit and tie, the girls don't wear black. Everybody wears black. 9 out of 10 girls that I tell to not wear black come to the studio wearing black. So it's fine. It always looks good, and yeah. So that's it. Mostly personality to me.
Doug, same question.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that's really important is for the senior and for the parents to go into this prepared to compromise. A little bit. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of compromise. And sometimes we can fill that role a little bit as mediator, as long as we, because we try not to take a complete side with the parent or the senior. And what I mean by that is, sometimes you'll have a senior who comes in and sees a photo of themselves that they don't like because they're smiling really big and they think they're cheesing too hard. And the mom is like, well, no, but I love your smile. I want to see your smile. And the senior wants it to be more straight-faced and edgy. And the mom says, well, when I see you looking like that, I see you giving me attitude. And so there's sometimes there's a disconnect between the parent and the senior a little bit, but it's okay to have a little of both and to go into it knowing that you're probably going to, if you really want everybody to be happy, go into it knowing that it's okay to have a little compromise. The parents don't necessarily have to get every image that they want exactly how they want it, and the senior needs to have a little bit of flexibility with their parents as well. If they both get some of what they want, then everybody will be happy. And if they go into it knowing that that's going to be a piece, then it might be easier for them to be prepared emotionally, mentally for that.
Of course, it's a team effort. Everybody wants the same goal to make these photos look as amazing as they can be, and you guys absolutely do that. Doug, Ally, thank you both so much for joining us today here on The Splash Live.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Day.